Hi, I'm Darrell Klassen. I've got a little special something for you, okay? I want to introduce someone to you that I think you'll really enjoy meeting. Harold Shalancev. Harold called me over 22 years ago and wanted in for lessons. He was already in the PGA program as an assistant golf pro. He had hit the ball. Well, I saw him knock a ball off a tee onto the green at 385 yards on a golf course where we had a long drive contest. Harold could hit it so far it wasn't even funny. But Harold didn't know where it was going. If he hit one on the green, the next one could be across the highway. Harold called me 22 years ago. I said, Harold, I can't get you in for lessons. I'm booked 9 months solid, day and night. I have no place for you. He came on a Saturday and stood and just waited and watched me teach and teach and teach. Student, student, student. He waited really for several hours. And finally, I had a student that didn't show up, and I had a little small window. And Harold ran over and he saw me not doing anything. He says, I'm Harold. I've been calling you on the phone. He says, can I hit a few balls for you? Just watch me. I watched him hit about 10 or 15 minutes worth of golf balls. I said, I'll take you as a student. And because I had a student going out of a program I was doing, and I said, I've got a slot. Come here in 3 weeks and we'll get you going. And Harold's been with me ever since. I had him on the big tour for a while. And then he got in a car accident that wasn't his fault and screwed up his back. He's had a lot of surgeries, but he'll be on the Champions Senior Tour in 4.5, 5 years. He's a great player, still hits the ball well over 300 yards. You'll like Harold. Take a look. It's loose. I'm here. I just got more out of it.
And you know what? The biggest difference and the hardest thing has been is controlling the distance, because I'm getting more distance out of it now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hitting a pitching wedge right now, probably 140. But I can also hit it 100.
Yeah.
You know, I can control it.
Control it where you want it.
You know, it's a lot easier to control with grip pressure. What you need to do, and just grip pressure, and trust it. You can't hit a bad shot. You know, you can't. You just don't hit bad shots. It's when you try to force something you have problems.
See what happens when Harold is when the hands are light holding the golf club, when we learn to do that properly, then we actually do not have the ability to manipulate the golf club. We basically can just swing it.
Exactly.
But it gives us a feeling we're out of control, but in fact we hit more consistent shots.
Right, and that's what I've done. That's where I've gotten to the last few months, is just getting that sunk into the noodle.
What kind of scores you been shooting?
And I'm down to probably a +4, +5 right now.
Good.
Probably so 67, 68s, and
pretty consistent.
Starting scoring again.
Excellent.
It's not with the long irons or the driver, it's just my wedge game has been, you know, I've been able to score up and down. Miss a fairway and do something wrong, you drilled it in my head long enough, if you can get to 100 yards in, you can score. Yeah. And that's where I don't have any trouble. If I miss a fairway, I know I can get to 100 yards and score. If I keep in the fairway, I know my irons are strong enough now that I can get within 10 feet of the pin. If the putter's hot that day, I'm going to shoot 64, 65. If the putter's off that day, I'll shoot 68, 69. So it's just trusting the putter and the wedge game. You know, the rest of the clubs in the bag, I don't spend a lot of time. Probably 80%, 90% of my time is spent with the wedge and putter.
Yep.
All my wedges, my scoring clubs.
Yep. Yep.
So. I mean, that's how everything's been the last few months. When I told you I started to score,
yeah,
it was because of grip pressure. You know.
Excellent.
And now, just like I said, if the putter's hot, yeah, and you're making those 10, 15 footers, you're going to score. But I'm not going to shoot worse than 69. Beautiful. You know, because I'm on the green and I'm putting myself in position to do so.
Take a moment and tell the camera who you are, what you did, where you're going.
Where I'm going, where I've been, everything.
How you got here.
How I got here. Harold Shalancev from Fresno, California. Started off trying to play college football, had a knee injury, and golf has been my passion since I was 5 years old. And got done playing college football and started getting into I wanted to really play golf, and played in a couple of mini tour events, a couple of Nike or Hogan tour events at the time, and played with guys that knew Daryl Klassen, and I wanted to get to him because if everybody else is going to him, I got to get to somebody that's good. And I called him on the phone for 2-3 months. He told me he was booked. And being a professional golfer and being around clubs, I never thought the guy could be that busy that I couldn't get in to see him. So I took a Saturday and drove down to Sierra View to the golf course, parked right in front of the driving range, and watched him for 3 hours, every 40 minutes, rolling people out. And when he finally got a break, I went up and introduced myself, a little bit of a pest, but I had to get to this guy somehow. And he says, okay, I got a few minutes to let you hit a few balls. He let me hit a few balls and says, okay, I'll work with you. And 22 years later, we're still working together. In '92, going through tour school, best golf I ever played. You know, finally understanding everything that we've worked on, you know, for 3 or 4 years up until that point. And then on January 1st of '93, was hit by a drunk driver and had 6 back surgeries as a result of that, and really quit golf for 5 years. But my ambition has always been to get back out on the tour. My game's good enough. I think my mind is strong enough to still play it, even at my age now at 45. I still think I can compete with the guys. I've played against several PGA guys that are out there. I've competed against them. But my goal is to get to the senior tour. And so in order to do so, I've got to focus a lot on the wedge game that he's instilled in my mind for 22 years. You got to learn to score. You got to learn to score. And that's where I'm at. I mean, you guys got to understand the driver, the long irons. You don't score with those things. You score with your wedge and your putter. And if people can understand, if you score with your wedge and your putter, you get it. The story he used to tell me when I first met him, he says, "What's your problem?" So I can't keep the driver on the golf course. He says, "Is it going out of bounds?" I said, "No, it's just in the trees or in the weeds or something like that." He says, "Can you get it to 100 yards in?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, it's not your driver that's causing you the problem. It's you can't score." He says, "Let me see you hit a few wedges." So I hit a few wedges. I couldn't even get the wedges within 30 feet of where he wanted me to. He says, "There's your problem." He says, "We got to learn how to hit the wedges first. So if you do get into trouble, if you can get to 100 yards in, you can score. And then you can putt." So if you think about it that way, that's where you become a player, when you have a wedge game. 4.5, 5 years is to be on the senior tour competing against those guys, and with the length that I have of the game and everything, I hit the ball as far as anybody else out there on tour. I'm still averaging over 300 yards with 6 back surgeries and everything, and really haven't had to adapt my swing too much. So it's a tribute to him, and he's my second dad. I mean, I call him Pops, and I'll call him at 10, 11 o'clock at night, and he's the only instructor that I know that I could be in Europe, Florida, Texas, any place, that he's worked with me, and my caddy can get on the phone with him, or I can get on the phone, put it on speakerphone, and say, "I'm having trouble, Dad. This is not working." He said, "Well, what are you doing?" He tells me 2 or 3 swings later, I hit a couple balls. "What's it doing?" I tell him. He said, "Okay, let's do this." I do this, boom, I'm fixed. Talk to you later. And I go out and I shoot a good number that day. So to have a guy that you can just call on the phone and tell him what you're doing wrong, and he can fix you over the phone, and he's not even there with you, that's huge. And there's not a lot of guys that can do that. And he's not one in 22 years of being with him, videotaping me. He sees it all with his eyes. He sees things with his eyes that I don't see even when I watch the video camera. He's on top of everything. And he says, "I don't need a video camera." He said, "If you want to look at it, then you can look at it, but I can see it right now. I know what you're doing." When I finally got to him, and I was in the PGA, I was working as an assistant pro to golf course, so we got to play in tournaments against each other. And I'd see this guy go out there and hit balls, hardly any swing at all, hitting the ball as far as I was. And back then I was in my late 20s, early 30s, but here's a guy 20 years, 30 years older than me, hitting the ball as far as I am. And I'm thinking, he's not even swinging. But here I am putting all this effort into it and swinging hard, and it was just, he's beating me. I mean, but he's scoring. And I finally looked at him and said, I realized to myself, he's scoring with his wedges and his putter and around the greens. And I was one, just naive, that I thought, you're around the green, use a sand wedge. You chip everything with a sand wedge. Here's this guy taking a 4-iron or 5-iron or whatever and chipping it. Either, if it didn't go in the hole, it was right next to the hole. He never missed a chip. So from a scoring standpoint, he understood what it took to score in this game. And I learned a lot of that from him over the years on how you score. And just this summer and last year when I played with some guys, they were talking to my caddy, they said, if he's not chipping it in the hole, he's right around the hole. He says, how does he do it? He says, what clubs are you using? And my caddy says, anywhere from a 9-iron to a 5-iron or 3-iron. It doesn't matter. Whatever he's feeling, he's doing. So by watching Darryl and playing with Darryl, I've learned the score. And his told me the quicker you can get the ball in the green, the better chance that ball has a roll and getting in the hole. So with a sand wedge, you chip it, it skips, checks, you don't know which way it's going to release. But a longer iron, you got to figure out how to score. What's your best and highest percentage of scoring? And there's nobody in his heyday that would score better than him. I watched it, and his putting, I wish he can give me 10% of how good he putts. I've never seen a guy that can step up and putt 20, 30 footers that go in the hole. People think Tiger Woods can putt good. They haven't seen Darryl putt. I've watched him, and he steps up and knocks 20, 30 footers in like they're nothing. Just give me 10% of those 20, 30 footers you knock in all the time. I've said that to him for years. Teach me how to do that. He says, you just feel like you're rolling the ball, and I just look at a line, I feel like I roll it, and everything goes in the hole. So.
Yeah, that's nice.
I mean, it's just, it was 3 years ago, I was invited by a friend of mine to go down to San Diego to play golf with Phil Mickelson. And his brother Timmy, you know, we're on the driving range hitting balls, and I tried to tell Phil I need at least 4 strokes aside from you. And he looked at me and he says, you're not getting 4 strokes aside. And I said, what do you mean? I says, I'm an amateur and I'm, you know, just a poor old insurance boy. He says, not with a wedge game like that, you're not. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, I've been watching you down the end of the range. You've got the same techniques that I use in a wedge. And I says, really? And he says, well, what do you think about it? So we talked to each other about it, and our philosophies were almost identical with the wedge game, and it's all stuff that Darryl's taught me. And we go out and play, and he shoots 67, I shoot 68 that day. So, and it's nice to see that everything I've worked with the wedge game, that the number 2 player and should be the number 1 player in the world, he and I are doing the exact same thing. The other thing is, when I first started taking lessons from Darryl, and you know, talking to him, well, what does Ledbetter know? What does Haney know? What does Peltz know? What do all these guys do? And he goes, go see them. He says, see what they have to say. So I went to their clinics and classes and saw what they had to say, and I came back and I said, they don't know any more than you do. Actually, you know more than they do, and you make it easy. I said, they're more mechanical, yours is more feel, and the natural. It's being able to play this game naturally. If you have a swing thought in your mind that I got to have the club in this position at the top, you know, I always ask Darryl, you know, where does my club have to be at the top? I don't care where it has to be. He said, just swing, you know, I don't care where the club is at the top. I said, what do you mean you don't care? He says, everybody that puts a video, they'll put Tiger Woods here and they put Harold here. Well, Tiger Woods is 6 feet tall, Harold's 6 feet 5 inches tall. Or you take a guy that's 5 feet 10. God has made all of us different. I am not going to have Tiger Woods swing Tiger's not going to have my swing. So these guys, these pros that put side-by-side images of two guys together and say, if you want to be a good golfer, we got to get your swing to there. Not going to happen. Look at Jim Furyk, the best driver of the golf ball that hits all the fairways. Look at his swing. He doesn't swing like anybody. Nobody can model his swing, but he hits every fairway. You just got to learn to control the club in the impact zone. If you know how to release the club, you know how to use the hands, you can play this game of golf. And so I went and saw these guys, didn't do me any good. I came back and 22 years later, I'm still with Pops. So that's where I'm at.